Welcome to Compliance Uncomplicated, an interview series dedicated to simplifying the unnecessarily complex world of risk and compliance. Hosted by Drata experts, each episode will tell a new story about high-growth startups and other brands that are building compliance pathways towards a culture of security. Every business, industry, and team has unique challenges when it comes to building trust. And for many startups, compliance is one of the first stepping stones towards that pathway. In each episode, we'll hear from founders, visionaries, and those tasked with building a foundation of trust for their brand. It's time to unravel the jargon and abbreviations and uncomplicate compliance.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast, Compliance Uncomplicated. This series is all about building pathways to cybersecurity through compliance. My name is Helina Medhin, and I am the Senior Community Strategist here at Drata. Today, I have the honor of co-hosting with my colleague, Arlo Guthrie, and he is the Director of Design. Arlo, I'm going to kick it over to you to introduce yourself a bit further and also introduce our exciting guest for today.
Yeah, thanks, Helina. I'm really excited to have an opportunity to talk to all of you today and to get to know Todd, our esteemed guest. I am the Director of Design here at Drata. So our team makes everything happen as far as user experience and all of the workflows that all of our customers count on every day to achieve all of their risk, security, and compliance expectations and needs. So I'm really excited today to introduce Todd Schiller, the CEO and co-founder at PixieBrix. And Todd, why don't you take a minute to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Great. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the podcast. So as you mentioned, I'm Todd Schiller. I'm co-founder and CEO of PixieBrix. PixieBrix is the first low-code platform that enables you to automate and enhance the websites and web apps that your teams already use. So me personally, I'm a computer scientist at heart. I grew up playing with computers and programming constantly. And I really love creating at the intersection of human and computer collaboration. So how each of us can make each other stronger. These days you can find me in Boston, but before that, I've lived in New York, Seattle, and St. Louis before.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Todd. You've lived lots of different places, so I'll dig deeper into that eventually. But I want to know, you mentioned your journey a bit. I'm wondering if you could delve a little deeper for us. You've held the hat as a founder, an engineer, and now CEO. Can you walk us a little bit through that history and maybe even how these kind of connected to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I did my undergrad and master's at Washington University in St. Louis. And there I was lucky enough to be exposed to undergraduate research. And so I did research in both machine learning and programming language design. And this was actually back when machine learning was cool. AI wasn't cool yet. It was AI winter, but machine learning was cool. And the hot approach at the time was called support vector machines. After I was at WashU, I went off to University of Washington and did a PhD really focused on human factors and automated program analysis. And from there, left academia and spent a decade in finance building trading tools, knowledge engineering tools, analytic systems, AI, ML. And that was both a mixture of running my own dev shop and also being at companies like Bridgewater Associates, where I was in their artificial intelligence lab. I actually first went the startup route in 2015, where I was head of engineering at a startup. There, the goal was, how could you replace McKinsey consultants with artificial intelligence? And kind of spoiler alert, as you've noticed, McKinsey's still around, so we didn't quite succeed there. But met some great people there. And in fact, in 2020, I started my current company, PixieBrix, with Mike Morandi, who I'd met at that startup.
You said something that was really interesting to me, Todd. You talked about this relationship between your technical side and that human side, right? That interaction between humans and technology. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you about that bridge, where that connection is, from your principles and your ideas around how we build those bridges between human intellect and the machine learning, artificial intelligence space.
Yeah, absolutely. What I think is really cool about software is that it's a representation of human knowledge about how the world works. There's so many business processes encoded into that, as well as how to structure human knowledge. If you think of a site like Wikipedia, right? And so when you build tools for analyzing software or creating software, you're actually deepening your understanding of the world and how to create things in that world. And then when you start running analyses or synthesizing, you're actually also creating new knowledge as you go. And why I think that's so powerful is that humans and computers have different strengths. Humans are very good at framing problems, navigating ambiguity, relationship building, whereas computers are good at rote memory, solving large computations. And increasingly now we're seeing also that they're very efficient at exploring the possibility spaces by rapidly synthesizing information from different sources to create new information. But they still need that interplay with humans to really drive outcomes.
Well, that's a very topical conversation right now. I'm certain that lots of folks who are listening to this podcast right now have at some point typed, show me a cat playing poker on the moon, and they've typed that into something like DALL-E, or have asked them to write an essay on ChatGPT. Do you think that divide is narrowing? Where do you think we're heading with the explosion that's happening currently in machine learning and artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I think there's still room for humans, right? That's why I'm on the podcast instead of you just chatting with ChatGPT 3. But I really love the advances we're seeing, right? I think it has a big potential to transform knowledge work. So even on our team, we use tools like Google Copilot, right? That's changed how we code and write traditional software. But it's not going to disrupt everything at once. There are limitations. So like in these large language models, there's limitations like hallucinations, right? Where they'll make up facts about the world, where depending on the situation, you don't want the model making up facts about the world. But it will very quickly change a lot of roles, especially where kind of the insight to rote work ratio is low, where the human can have the insight and kind of experiment with different ideas. And the computer is the thing actually like fleshing out those ideas more, but the human is guiding it. And I think definitely see that. And that's also why we're working to infuse AI into our product, because with our product, we can deliver it directly at people's fingertips in any of the web applications that they're using, even if those applications don't have AI built into them.
Shifting gears a little bit, the name PixieBrix, how did we come up with it? It's so unique. So we can start there and then I'll continue.
Yeah, I wish I could take credit for it. It actually came from my co-founder, Mike, but there's sort of two parts to it. There's the brick part, which actually comes from in the product, we have these things called bricks that you can combine together to build out actions and enhancements. These can be things for doing things like scraping data from a page, asking the user to fill out a form, or kind of circling back to what we were just talking about, being able to brainstorm ideas using OpenAI, right? So we have bricks for brainstorming ideas, summarizing content, things like that, and you can infuse those directly into your apps. And then where the Pixie comes from is it's really for us about delivering a magical experience, right? And often our tool is the first exposure that people have had to being able to even modify some of the software that they use in these ways, especially for the non-developers.
Okay, well, great. That makes actually a lot of sense. And can you tell us what you're currently working on or what you're currently building?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, PixieBrix is the first low-code platform to automate and enhance the web apps that you already use. We deploy as a browser extension. I don't know if both of you are familiar with browser extensions like Grammarly for grammar checking or Honey for coupon clipping. But what's nice about browser extensions is they let you modify websites even if you don't own the website or if you don't have the source code to that site. Those could be third-party sites like LinkedIn, enterprise SaaS tools like Salesforce, or internal tools, right? I think a lot of people listening to this podcast might have been in a situation before where they're using some software and the developer who wrote that software at that company is no longer there, right? And no one knows how to change it. And with PixieBrix, what you can do is you can actually add missing functionality to these tools and actions and enhancements that you can build in seconds. And if you were building browser extensions in a traditional way, it would take you hours, days, or weeks to do that. And so where I think it changes the paradigm for enterprise software is, I like to use this analogy of, let's say you had a car and you didn't like the stereo. You wouldn't go out and buy a new car, right? Because now you have two cars. But a lot of people, they end up with yet another system, right? You also wouldn't go out and buy a home stereo, right? Because if the whole goal is to listen to music while driving on your commute, like the home stereo is not doing you any good. And so our viewpoint is the best best path forward is take what you already like, but then upgrade the parts to really make it a perfect fit for your goals. And so we think it's the same for the technology that you use. You should be able to customize it to your needs, even if you aren't a programmer or a capital S software developer.
Yeah. Thank you for that insight and explaining it in layman's terms. That's very easy to understand when you put it that way.
I wanted to ask a question. So something that you mentioned low code, right? So we hear a lot about low code or even no code approaches for people to build their own integrations, applications, solutions. So you mentioned that you're a low code platform. Are you sometimes a no code platform? Is there really a difference? Is it a fuzzy line? How does PixieBrix and how do you look at that?
Yeah, that's a great question. In my mind, no code and low code are quite different, because once you add in business logic, the creator or the author does need some ability to think computationally. That might be handling corner cases or error cases or recovering. And that's even if you aren't writing traditional code, you still have to think through those things. And often that's a skill set that, unless you've taken a class before, really have thought about it, is different than how you normally would need to engage with your software. And so what we strive to do is we do strive to create a product that has a low floor and a high ceiling. And as part of that, we do want people to be able to create useful things for themselves with no code. And so we guide people down those paths. One of those paths is we actually have a marketplace where people can grab what other people have created and shared, and then they can customize what we call those blueprints, so that they're not starting from scratch. And so they can kind of fill in the parts that allow them to really customize it to their needs without necessarily changing the business logic or other pieces. So it's really about that sliding scale.
So at Drata, we lean pretty heavily on automation. And so as you so eloquently described how your company is building your product to help customize web applications for a better user experience, why was leaning on automation important for your organization and product? I know you touched on this a bit.
Yeah, I think for us, our talent philosophy is we want to find great people and then give them as much leverage as possible. And so a lot of that is choosing the right best of breed software for our team members to use, making sure they have like modern laptops, things like that. But automation is also a super critical part of that. It's embedded into everything we do, and it's how we've been able to enable so much in a short amount of time, right? So when we think about compliance, that's why we went with Drata. That's also why we lean very heavily on tools like GitHub Actions for doing a lot of our continuous integration and deployment. It's so that we as humans can focus on like the real value that we drive and the insights and the engineering there. Yeah, would be love to hear kind of your take on that as well, and how you're using automation at Drata.
So at Drata, we drink a lot of our own champagne. One thing that a lot of people we like to talk about is how Drata was SOC 2 compliant out of the gate. We wanted to build tools that made it possible for us to, do everything that we're promising. So we use a lot of automation is just what's one of our values. It's in our blood, even as part of the, product design team, we think about that all the time. What are the parts of this experience that our customers don't need to do? What are the parts of this that Drata can automate for them? What are the parts of this that, through the trust they have in our platform that we're engendering through the consistency of our work, can our customers feel that automation is as powerful as we believe it is as well? So it's definitely, it's one of our values. It's a principle that we have in every choice that we make.
Yeah, I love that. And that definitely it comes across also in your marketing materials and your sales process and everything else. And also one of the reasons why we went with Drata is our compliance readiness provider. There's real philosophical alignment there.
Something I'm very interested in as well, from that philosophical alignment side here, we are an application that integrates with a lot of applications. We have all of these integrations that we've built with GitHub and, IDP tools and HRIS systems. And so we have to think about how the Drata user experience and those other user experiences, how they fit together. You're actually doing it at another level because you're actually putting your user experience, the PixieBrix user experience, on top of other user experiences. How does your organization, your design teams or what have you, think about balancing the PixieBrix experience with all of these other experiences that maybe you can't always predict?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think fundamentally it comes down for us to, we believe the future of the work is future of work is people first. I think a lot of software and companies are process centric or product centric, but as you notice, like a lot of people, right, they wear many different hats in their organization, right? So I wear a CEO hat. I also, on the technical compliance side, lead that. And so many different hats in both my work life and personal life. And so I need to navigate between different processes during the day, different products, et cetera, as part of that. And so with PixieBrix, what we want to have happen is PixieBrix actually kind of falls into the background, and it's really about putting the people in the center to empower them to accomplish their goals. So it's really that people first philosophy.
And so it's probably fair to say that, customization within all of your applications, this is becoming more and more important for, really any of the tools that we as users encounter. How are you preparing for that kind of a future?
Yeah, it's definitely a big part of our thesis. I think we're in the golden age of software as a service. There's best of breed software for every job out there. If you're a product manager, you're probably living in Product Board or another similar tool. If you're a project manager, you might live in Jira. Or if you're responsible for technical controls, right, you're going to be spending a lot of time in Drata. And so in order for that to fit smoothly, and I think Drata addresses this very well, is that software needs to integrate and fit into your business processes and align with your business goals that you're trying to have, right? In terms of passing your SOC 2 audit or passing your ISO 27001, right? And I think some companies like Salesforce have been a bit visionary with their Lightning framework or their plugin frameworks to customize screens and support add-ons and add-on marketplaces. But we really ask the question, why shouldn't all software have that customizability layer, right? And why should it be a developer or an admin having to customize it? Why can't the end user also have control over their destiny when it comes to their software and how they want to work? So it's really about, you might call it democratizing that customizability on software.
So shifting gears a little bit to compliance, let's just start off talking about what compliance is and explaining it, just in very elementary terms in your view. What is compliance to you?
Yeah, I think to me, compliance is about agreeing to do important things and then keeping your word. So an example I'll give is, like, my dentist recommends that I brush my teeth for 2 minutes every day in the morning and the evening, right? So I don't get a cavity. That's an important thing. Compliance is actually about doing that every single day. And luckily there are some tools to help. So I actually have a toothbrush, right? It actually, when it starts running, it turns off after 2 minutes. And that's how I know that I've hit the 2 minutes. So it's really about, it's pretty simple, agreeing to do important things and then keeping your word.
Yeah, I love the analogies here. It is a lot easier to understand when you put it that way. So following up with that, why do you find it important to begin pursuing compliance now?
Yeah, I mean, at PixieBrix, again, we're very philosophically aligned with how Drata approached it. We had a focus on security and compliance from day one. So I had built software for finance and Fortune 500 companies. I'd been through security reviews and knew what was required to serve those kinds of companies at scale. And so really it was about, we were secure and compliant from day one. And then it was just about picking the right time to go through the SOC 2 process and adopt a platform like Drata.
So congrats on your SOC 2.
Yeah,
that's
thanks.
a huge achievement. Why was SOC 2 so important to you now? As a newer startup, going after that so early, why was SOC 2 so valuable to your organization?
Yeah, I think SOC 2 was really about, one, getting credit for what we were already doing. So we were already having great controls and approaching things in a smart way. And then the second big piece of it was communicating our compliance and communicating our controls in a way that our customers' IT departments were already familiar with. And so I think that's the advantage of some of these standards, is putting it in a format so that they're not having to kind of your customers aren't having to deal with different ways of seeing it communicated. For us, this is especially important because we do leverage one-to-many and partnered sales channels. And so our partners need to also be able to communicate our compliance approach to the end customer. And so it really is about kind of keeping our word and then also communicating that in a way that's simple and makes sense to our customers.
So staying on the subject of compliance, do you feel that this is a trust building exercise, a revenue tool for sales, example being SOC 2, or maybe somewhere in between?
Yeah, I think you probably might have a better perspective on me, but I think my take is that compliance is now table stakes for enterprise sales. Yeah, you can get through security review without SOC 2 and without audits, but you still have to have your ducks in a row anyway, and then show the evidence to the IT team that you're actually doing those controls. And so I do think SOC 2, especially with more regulation now as well, both in Europe and the United States, is really just table stakes. But what I've seen during sales conversations is it immediately puts the business stakeholder at ease because they know they can just focus on the business case because they're not going to have to worry about the IT department. And then it's also, again, it's important because we do have those one-to-many and channel sales that it's simple for our customers and partners to feel comfortable communicating our compliance posture to the end customer. So again, early days, but definitely helping to open doors already.
We talked a little bit earlier about the value of automation, right? And the philosophy that we share between our two organizations about the importance of automation. Let's expand on that, a little bit. Automation is critical to your business, so much so that you're also providing opportunities for automation for your customers. Do you feel, especially in the compliance space, that automation should accelerate your business, if you're doing it more versus doing it more the manual way? Do you see the value from the automation in, continuously occurring for your organization?
Yeah, I think thankfully I've never had the pleasure of going through a SOC 2 without an automated platform. So I won't be able to speak to that, but I've definitely done security reviews without it, and it's certainly a pain. I think the real value, though, is in that automated approach is visibility is certainly a big piece. I think especially as we look towards our SOC 2 Type 2, which requires compliance over a period of time, you need to be able to collect that evidence to show that you're compliant without just incurring constant overhead in collecting that evidence, whether it's weekly, monthly, or quarterly. But I think the real big win for us, though, is as we think about an early stage startup, is that it allows us to scale our team and architecture without the additional compliance overhead. So when we're making architecture decisions or hiring decisions, there's never something in the back of our mind where it's just, oh, now we're incurring all this additional operational overhead for us to maintain compliance.
I'm very curious about PixieBrix's approach to delivering a great user experience. It really does offer an amazing user experience to do something, to take things you already have and do other things with it. It's very intuitive to that. And you've talked a lot about that relationship between, the human and the machine. So what is some of what's the secret sauce at PixieBrix, right? What is it that allows you to provide such a great user experience to your users?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd love to turn this on you after I answer this as well. I often like to invert this question. So often I think about what provides a bad user experience and how do we avoid that. I think some people call those zeros in the product. So those could be things like losing work or just getting an unhelpful error message or things like that. But I also think that in today's landscape, that's also not enough, right? And you also need to proactively provide a positive experience. And so at PixieBrix, we view it as about, and we talk constantly about how do we make the user the hero of the story, right? We're not the hero in the story. What we're trying to do is enable other people to really empower them to be the hero of their own story, help themselves out and help their team members out. And this does actually also mean being proactive in making users successful and delivering a delightful experience. And so, even reflecting on our experience with Drata, I think one of the things that stood out for us that was delightful was out of the support team and the support capability built into Drata, whether it's if we had compliance questions or even technical questions on integrations. Because again, this was sort of our first time going through this process, and it was great to have that support really at our fingertips. So kudos on that.
Thank you. I'm sure our customer success team will hear this and be very proud of that. That human side of it is certainly how I would answer your question. What do we do? And I think we have a very similar approach here. The computers aren't going to replace us just yet, right? There's still humans at the end of all of this, at the other side of the glowing rectangle that you're doing all of this work. And we pride ourselves at securing trust on the internet. Well, trust who? Well, that's trust between human beings. So keeping humans at the center. I love the way you said, I'm going to absolutely steal that, making the user the hero of their story. That's a really great, succinct way to talk about, achieving your goals, reaching your objectives, overcoming obstacles with the tools that are at your hands. I really loved the way you turned to that phrase. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you to you both. This was a really, really wonderful conversation. I got a lot of insight from you, Todd. Appreciate you sharing your human side with us today and giving us insight into PixieBrix. It was a wonderful chat today. I think that we don't have any questions at the moment left for you, but we're very open to a part 2 and continuing the conversation as they come in. So thank you again for your time. And Arlo, thanks for being my co-host today. This was a wonderful chat. Any closing remarks?
This was fun. I'll do it anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Awesome. Well, take care, everyone, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening to Compliance Uncomplicated, a Drata podcast. To learn more about the series, go to drata.com/uncomplicated. Discuss this episode on our community secured at community.drata.com or subscribe to our newsletter, Trusted, to stay up to date on the latest episodes.